Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
For a long time, $1 trillion from China was invested in many different companies and businesses in the United States. This was a huge amount of money. But recently, China made a big decision. They suddenly stopped all this investment money from going into U.S. companies. There was no warning before this happened. Now, business leaders and people in charge of companies in the U.S. are very surprised. They are trying hard to understand why this happened so quickly and why the flow of money just stopped. This is not just a simple change in business rules. Many people see it as a very big and sudden financial shock. Some experts have even called it a financial attack because it happened so fast and affects so much money. This big shock can cause real problems for many people in the U.S. It can mean that companies have to let people go, causing layoffs. It can also mean problems with people's savings plans for the future, like their retirement money. China gave reasons for stopping the money. They said they did it because of risks between different countries. They also said they wanted to make sure their money and investments were safe. This decision was officially made on a specific date, March 17, 2025. The order was not announced on the news right away. People found out about it later from official government documents that were released. Before this sudden stop, the amount of money China was investing in the U.S. was already much, much smaller than it used to be. It had dropped from a very large number to almost nothing over the past few years. This new order takes that number completely to zero. Some people who study these things think this was a carefully planned step by China. They believe it was a way to put very strong financial pressure on the United States without getting into an open conflict or fight. So, this event leads to some very important questions for everyone. First, why exactly did China decide to stop all these investments into U.S. companies at once? And what is China's real, long-term goal with this action? What are they planning to do next? This stopping of investment money might be just the first part of a much bigger financial event. 2. The big stop. On March 17, 2025, a very important change happened in the flow of money across countries. The government in China made a clear decision. They issued a rule that stopped companies from China from making any new investments in companies located in the United States. This was a big and sudden halt to money movement. This new rule was not announced in public meetings or on television news. The information became known in a quiet and unexpected manner. Details about this stop were discovered hidden inside official documents that companies must file with the government. After these papers were found, the news agency Reuters confirmed that the ban was real and in effect. Beijing, where the main government of China is, gave two main reasons for taking this action. First, they spoke about greater risks in world politics. They called this geopolitical risk. Second, they mentioned the need to keep their money and properties safe. They used the words asset security concerns to explain this. To see the real impact, we can look at the amounts of money involved. In 2018, companies from China invested around $46 billion into U.S. businesses. Over time, this number went down a lot. Just before this new rule, the yearly investment was only about $2.3 billion. Now, with the complete stop put in place, the amount of new Chinese investment is practically $0. A study by the Rhodium Group, which tracks investment data, clearly showed this drastic reduction to nothing. Experts who study global finance and politics, like Professor Zha Daozhang, who teaches at Peking University, explained the meaning behind this move. They said it was a step that China thought about very carefully. It was not a sudden decision made because of anger or a single event. Instead, China used this stop as a way to create strong pressure on the United States. They wanted to impact the U.S. economy directly by cutting off this important money supply. Professor Zhang suggested this was a calculated way to apply financial pressure without starting a direct, open conflict or military action between the countries. It showed a strategic use of economic and financial power. 3. A bigger plan. The investment ban on March 2025 was more than just one action. It was part of China's bigger plan. For many years, China has been working to be less dependent on the United States economy. This is a long-term goal to reduce financial connections. One key step in this plan is selling U.S. government debt. China holds large amounts of these bonds, which are like loans to the U.S. government. But they have been selling them in big amounts. For example, in 2024, China sold $14 billion of U.S. debt. This was the largest amount sold in 1 year since 2016. Now, China holds a total of $775 billion of this debt. This is much less than before. Selling these loans helps China move its money away from the U.S. financial system and reduces its exposure to U.S. risk. Also, Chinese state banks have stopped doing some transactions with U.S. banks using U.S. dollars. New rules from China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, caused this change. This means less need for U.S. dollars in some big international money movements and promotes the use of other currencies. U.S. officials have seen this strategy clearly. The U.S. Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo, said in January that China is changing its financial connections. She warned that this change significantly reduces the United States' influence or leverage over China. The tools that Washington usually uses, like taxes on goods from China, tariffs, or stopping some exports, are mainly about trade. They are too slow and not the right kind of tool to stop China's fast financial moves. Capital can move much faster than ships carrying goods. China is also building stronger economic links with other countries. They are making deals with countries like Saudi Arabia and nations in Europe. Some companies in Europe are working to do business in ways that bypass U.S. rules and the dollar system. This difference in power and influence, this leverage gap, is growing. Many experts think it might become irreversible. China is not just pulling money out of the U.S., it is also redirecting that capital to other markets, building its own financial system. This makes China harder for the U.S. to pressure using traditional methods. So, the investment ban was not just an isolated event. It was a clear signal of this bigger plan. It shows that China is using its financial power in a strategic way. This plan aims to slowly change the global financial system, making the United States less central and powerful. It is a careful, planned action to put pressure on the U.S. without open conflict. 4. Others leave too. The issue was bigger than just China. It was a sign that something larger was happening with foreign money in the U.S. Money coming into the U.S. from other countries started to go down a lot. This is called foreign direct investment. In the past year, this investment dropped by more than 20%. For the start of this year, it looked like it would drop even more, close to 20%. This showed that other countries were also pulling back their money, not just China. There were clear examples of this. A big money fund from Norway sold a large amount of U.S. technology stocks. This fund sold $7.1 billion of these stocks. They said they were not sure about the rules for companies in the U.S. This was one sign of growing doubt. Japan also showed less interest in U.S. investments. Japan has a very big fund that manages money for people's retirement. This fund also put less money into buildings for businesses in the U.S. They took 30% of their money out of U.S. business buildings. This happened after some banks in the U.S. were judged as less safe by a company called Moody's. Losing investment from such a big fund was important. Also, U.S. companies have a lot of old money they need to pay back soon. This is called corporate debt. By the end of 2026, companies need to pay back $4.1 trillion of this debt. A company called S&P Global reported this large number. Normally, people and funds from other countries buy this kind of debt. This helps companies pay back the old money and get new money easily. But now, fewer people from other countries want to buy U.S. company debt. They are less sure about the future of U.S. companies and the U.S. economy. Because fewer foreign investors are buying this debt, U.S. companies must find money from inside the U.S. This often means they have to pay higher costs to borrow money than before. This makes it more expensive for businesses. These examples showed something important. It showed that people around the world felt less sure about putting their money in the U.S. market. Global trust in the U.S. market was shaking. It was not only China causing this problem. Other countries were also taking their money out or investing less. This changing situation made it much harder for U.S. businesses to find the money they needed to grow or even to keep their operations running smoothly. It was a clear signal that global confidence in the U.S. financial world was decreasing. 5. A hard time for business. American companies started to feel the effects very quickly. Finding money became a big problem. Before, many businesses got money from foreign investors. These investors would buy parts of the companies or give them loans. But now, that foreign money was gone. Companies still needed money to run their business, pay workers, and grow. With less foreign help, they had to look for money in other places. One way was to sell special kinds of loans called bonds. But because the situation was uncertain, these loans were risky. So companies had to offer very high interest rates to get people to buy them. These high-cost loans are sometimes called junk bonds. In 2024, companies sold a lot more of these high-interest bonds. The amount went up a lot, by about 38% compared to the year before. The cost to borrow this money also went up. On average, companies had to pay about 9.6% interest, which was much higher than before. Look at one company, Hartwell Tech in Boston. This company made things for factories. They were expecting a large amount of money, $180 million from investors in China. But when the investment freeze happened, this money disappeared overnight. Hartwell Tech needed money fast. They had to take a special emergency loan from another company called Apollo Global. This loan cost them a high amount of interest, 11.3%. They had to promise their valuable company ideas and property as security for the loan. Experts who check companies' money situations started to give warnings. Rating agencies like Fitch said that many mid-sized companies in the U.S. were in danger. About 1 in 5 of these companies might have serious problems finding money or paying back their loans in the next 1.5 years. Companies are being forced to make money deals that help them survive now, even if it is bad for them later. 6. A broken dream. America had a big dream: to bring manufacturing jobs back home. This idea was called reshoring. The goal was to make important products like computer chips and batteries in the United States again. The government even offered help, like tax money, to companies that wanted to build new factories or expand old ones in the country. This was seen as a way to make the U.S. stronger and less dependent on other countries for necessary goods. However, building these new factories and facilities costs a lot of money. Many of the projects planned for reshoring needed investment from companies outside the U.S. They relied on foreign money to help pay for the buildings, machines, and workers. But in the past year, this foreign money started to disappear. As discussed before, investment from China stopped completely. Money from other countries also became harder to get. This created a big problem for the reshoring dream. Reports showed that many companies planning to build in the U.S. now have money problems. They cannot find the funding they expected because the foreign partners are gone. For example, there were plans for a very large battery factory in Michigan. This project was going to cost billions of dollars and create many jobs. There was also a plan for a big center in Nevada to build robots. Both these projects needed money from abroad. But because the foreign investment stopped, these plans were either delayed or canceled completely. Even bigger projects faced difficulties. A major company, Intel, planned a huge facility in Ohio to make computer chips. This project was important for making America more independent in chip production. But even this large project has faced delays in its building plans because of funding issues. Experts said that without different sources of money, these important projects might not happen. They might just remain ideas or small attempts instead of truly changing American industry. The hope of bringing manufacturing back home was meeting a difficult reality. There was not enough money available to build everything that was planned. The dream of making things in America again was hard to achieve without the necessary capital. 7. You pay the price. The big changes happening far away, with money and investments, have a real effect on people's daily lives. You notice it when you go to the store. Prices are increasing for many common items. This is connected to taxes, called tariffs, on goods coming from China. The amount of goods from China with these tariffs is now much larger, affecting products worth over $500 billion, compared to $370 billion a few years ago. The average tax is now higher, around 22%. This means things you buy are more expensive. For example, consumer electronics, home appliances, and parts for cars now cost more. The price of appliances for your home went up significantly, over 16% in just 1 year. Even big stores are impacted. Major retailers like Walmart and Target have warned that their profits are not as high as before. They said these higher tariff costs are a main reason. Some groups that study the economy estimate that the average American family might have to pay nearly $2,000 more for goods by the end of this year because of these higher prices. Companies are also facing difficulties. Their profits are not growing quickly. In the last part of one recent year, profits for big companies grew very slowly, much less than before. Companies must decide if they pay the extra costs or make customers pay more. But regular people's wages are not increasing much, and the general increase in prices, inflation, is still above 3.5%. If companies raise prices too much, people might stop buying, which would hurt the businesses. The feeling of not knowing what will happen next is very strong. Some studies show that this uncertainty in the U.S. economy is now at its highest point in more than 10 years. It is seen as more uncertain than during the difficult time in 2008 or the period of lockdowns in 2020. This high uncertainty comes from several things happening at once: changes in money rules, unclear government spending plans, and fast changes in trade rules. Leaders of companies also feel unsure. Their confidence about the future is low. Many say that not having clear government rules makes it hard to plan for the future. People who study money say that companies are not investing in new things as much because they are confused, not just because it costs too much. Because the situation feels unstable, investors are moving their money. A large amount of money, more than $120 billion, has been taken out of U.S. stock market funds in just the last few months. This shows a bigger problem. It is not just a short difficulty. It seems to be about trust in the U.S. economy for the long term. 8. A new world. The world is changing. It is not just the U.S. economy that feels different. Now we see a change in global power. Countries that were friends with the U.S. are also making new plans. Germany, a U.S. ally, made an important energy deal with China. France, another friend, is now using China's money, the yuan, for some trade. This means they do not use U.S. dollars for these deals. Money from places like Europe and Saudi Arabia is starting to go to China. These countries see China as a more steady and sure place to put their money right now. They feel China's rules are clear. China is working to build its own financial system. It is making it easier for companies from other countries to list their shares in China. This helps foreign companies find money and grow inside China. China is also making its digital money stronger. This digital yuan can now be used in 13 countries for trade. This allows countries to buy and sell things without needing the U.S. dollar. Experts think the U.S. investment freeze was just the start. It is part of a bigger plan. China wants to make its own markets strong. At the same time, it is slowly taking money away from U.S. markets. This is not about fighting with armies. It is a quiet change in how money moves around the world. The U.S. dollar has been number one for a long time, but other options are growing. What do you think would be the first thing to change in your daily life if the U.S. dollar lost its top spot?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.